Welcome to this HTML crash course. In this course, I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about HTML to start building your website confidently. We are going to start with the basics to a little bit more advanced concepts. We are going to be building a small website called Tech Workshop Registration that puts together everything we've learned, and after that we're going to put our website online so that we can share the link with our friends and they can visit our site too. And in part 2 of this tutorial, which will be looking at CSS, we're going to first start with our project that we built in our HTML, and we're going to style it, make it look professional, something like this. And after that, we're going to build more projects. If you've never coded before, don't worry. This is where you start learning to code. After that, you're going to start building confidence, and slowly by slowly, you're going to see yourself making your own projects. To do that, we are going to need a few tools, and the only two things we need in this course is Visual Studio Code, and we're going to need a browser. Throughout the series, I'll be using Chrome, so feel free also to download Chrome or any browser you like. And also, we will need Visual Studio Code, that's what I'll be using. So head over to VS Code and just type VS Code download, press enter, and then jump over to the first link, and then you're going to see these buttons to click for your operating system. I'm on Windows, so I'll be using Visual Studio Code for Windows. If you're on Linux, feel free to choose any from here. And also if you're on Mac, we have a Mac version right here. So without wasting any time, let's jump in and start learning to code. I believe you're done downloading and installing Visual Studio Code. Also in this tutorial, I just wanted to let you know that I will be using Google Chrome as my browser. So let's begin. First, we're going to create a folder. Just right click on your desktop and then go to new and then folder. And then give your folder a name. I'm going to give mine HTML-tutorial. And then after I'm done creating my folder, I'm going to open Visual Studio Code, and you can see I have opened Visual Studio. So I'm going to close this welcome menu, and then I'm going to click on this icon, the Explorer icon, and then I want to open my folder inside Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to press on folder. If you don't have folder, you can come to menu and then go to file and then open folder, then head over to desktop, and then you're going to see the folder you created. Select it, then it's going to open in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to create a new file in which we're going to put our HTML code. So come to this icon, new file, press it, and then I want you to name your file anything, but make sure it ends with a .html extension. So I'm going to say index.html. And you see we have this icon here. I'll show you in a minute how we can change it to make it look good. Then I'll close my Explorer. So you can click this icon to open and close, or a shortcut is you can press Ctrl B to toggle between open and close. So I'll zoom in a little bit, and I want you to type H1 and then press enter. So we see Visual Studio auto-completes it for us. So we just typed H1 and it created this tag also for us. What we were supposed to do is type less than sign, then H1, then greater than sign. And this is called an opening tag, and the other one is called a closing tag. So the difference between a closing and an opening tag is simply this /. So if I remove the /, we have two opening tags, and that is not good for HTML syntax because HTML has its own rules which you need to follow. So we can put it back there and we have a closing and an opening tag. So I want you to type inside the tags, I want you to type subscribe to this channel. Sorry about this. So once we add a text inside our tags, all this becomes an HTML element. An HTML element contains an opening tag, text inside, and then the closing tag. So right now this is an HTML element. The next thing we're going to do is to see how we can open our page in our browser. So we're going to go back to our desktop, and then we're going to open the folder we created. And since we created with the .html extension, we see this logo for Google Chrome. If your default app for browser is not Google Chrome, probably going to see here something like Microsoft Edge or Safari. But for me, my default browser is Chrome. So I'm going to left click on the file and then right click and then open. And we see we have our page right here opened, and we have the text subscribe to this channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this side by side. So I'm going to maximize my window, and then I'm going to make sure they're both equally put. So here is my website. So once I do that, I'm going to zoom out a little bit on my Visual Studio Code. I want us to create another tag. So we can say h2, and you can say my first web page, like that. And then to see it in our browser, we have to come to our browser and refresh. But for you, maybe you might not see it. That's because right now maybe you're seeing a white dot on your tab. Instead of that X, you're seeing a white dot here. That white dot just tells you your file is not saved, or the changes made to your file have not been saved. So to save them, you have to come to menu, file, and then scroll down and then save. So you press save, and then if you refresh your browser, you're going to see it work. And a shortcut we can see we have is Control S. Shortcuts are so good, they help you speed up the process. So instead of going to menu and selecting save, you can always press Control S and you will save your file. So when you refresh, it works fine. But for me, you've realized I don't have the white dot when I make a change because I'm using autosave. So if we go back to file, scroll down, we will see autosave. So if I uncheck it right now and I make a change in my browser, you see I now have that white dot. So I have to press Ctrl S and then save and then refresh my browser so that it can work well. For you, I also want you to use autosave because it's so important, because for beginners, sometimes you'll forget to save your project and keep on refreshing your browser wondering, why is my page not working? And once you use autosave, the job becomes easy. So another thing I wanted to tell you, this is not the best structure for our HTML page. So we need to start doing it following HTML rules. So what we are going to do first is delete all this and then come back to our browser and refresh, and we see it works well. And then we are going to use doc type. So we're going to use an exclamation mark and then type doc type in caps and then HTML in lower case. So once we say doc type HTML, we are telling our browser this is an HTML file. And then the next thing we're going to do is you're going to open HTML tags. So once we open HTML tags, we're going to have two sections inside it. We have head and we have body. So what we can do right now, we can create head like that, and then we are going to have another tag inside head. What is important about the head? The head contains everything about the browser which works with, let's say, SEO and everything else that we will not see in our page. But the body contains everything else that we're going to see in our page. One thing that we can only see in our page is the title. So you can see this little index.html on our tab on our browser here. That's the only thing in our head tag that we're going to see in our page. So let's change this and see how we can call it. So we're going to have this tag called title. And now we have two tags again, opening and closing. And then we can change the title and give it something like my first web page. Instead of calling it all that, I can just say my first page. And then if I refresh, we see the title has changed on our browser tab. We see my first page. And then I said, you might have noticed I clicked something and my text dropped to the next line. So I just pressed Alt Z. So if your text is stretching all the way to the other side whereby you can't see, you can just press Alt Z and it will drop to the next line. It won't take the next line, it will just push down the next line and drop down. The next thing we have is body. So inside body is what we are going to see in our page right here. So if we say right now again H1 and say my first page and refresh, now we get my first page on our browser. Everything inside this tag and this one, the opening and the closing tags, is going to be viewed inside our browser. But things inside the head are not important for us. Actually, it's just important for the Google engine and the search engines. That's why we have so many things in the header, the meta tags, the link tags, and all those. But for now, let's continue learning slowly by slowly. So we can see we have this H1 tag inside our body tag and we can see it. One thing you've noticed, every time we make a change in our code editor, we have to come to our browser and refresh. But sometimes also the same way you can forget to save your file in your code editor, you might forget to refresh in your browser. To solve that problem, I use an extension called Live Server. So I want you to download that extension. It has been created by Retweak Day, so I'm just going to maximize my Visual Studio Code, and you see it is created by Retweak Day. Currently it has over 70 million downloads. I want you to click install. Now if you read down here, it says, wanna try Live Server? Better, it will enable live changes without saving file. And that's true. So let's see how it works. I'm going to close this tab and then I'm going to minimize my page again. And I'm going to bring it somewhere here. So I'm going to bring it this way. Then reduce the size of my website. So to use Live Server, we can do this first. We can come to our file here in our Explorer, right click, and you can see Open with Live Server, or we can click anywhere in our page and say Open with Live Server again, we see. And finally, we can choose to go live. So once we go live, we see we have a new tab opened. We have this IP address and then we have this port number 5500/index.html. So this is a local development server, so it's not actually in the internet. Don't get so excited yet. Let's see what happens if we make a change in our code editor. If I say H2 and say HTML is fun learning, we see it appear in our browser without refreshing. That's the most important and the best thing about Live Server. Every time you make a change in your code editor, it's going to reflect in your browser. See you in the next tutorial when we'll start learning about headers. In this section, we will be learning about headers and paragraphs. But before we do that, I told you in the previous section that we will learn how we can change this logo and have our own that looks nice. And I forgot to show you, so I'm going to do it now. So I want you to come over to these four boxes. You can see a tooltip saying extensions. Click on it, and then I want you to type material and then icons. And then I'm going to expand my Visual Studio and I'm going to click on material icons, but I'm going to use the second one. So material icon theme. I want you to press install, and then I'm going to trust the publisher. Nice. So we are done installing. So we're just going to click on material icon theme. And immediately we do that, we see our logo changes to 5, which is the logo for HTML5, which is really beautiful. And also we can choose to install another theme. So let's choose to install another theme. So I'm going to just type theme, and then if you want, you can select any that you want. And I'm going to use this one. So it has 158,000 downloads. And I'm going to trust the publisher again. And I'm going to choose dark modern. And after doing that, I think I don't need the dark modern. Let me choose the other one. So I'm going to go to themes and then color theme. And then I'm going to choose, let me choose dark solarized. So once I choose that one, I can close my Explorer and I can continue learning. So I'm going to minimize again my Visual Studio Code so that we can see our browser too. So let's start learning about headers. So we have two types of headers. We have H1 here and we have H2. I'm going to remove this. And first, before we start creating new headers, I'm going to tell you a few things about headers. In HTML, we have 6 types of headers. So we have from H1 to H6. H1 represents the most important heading in the page, while H6 represents the least important. So if we have H1 here and say HTML learning, we can see it in our browser. We can also have the last one and say H6, no H7. We can say I love HTML. So you can see in size, it's really small compared to H1. That's because it's least important than H1. So after H1, we have H2, and it's the second most important heading in the website. So it's more like a subheading, but H1 is the main heading. So I can say day 1, HTML learning. Great. So you can see also it's a little bit smaller than H1. Instead of saying day 1 HTML learning, I could just call this headings section. So it makes a little bit sense. And we can see we have H2 and we also have H3. So the order continues from H1 to H6, and every time you add another one, it becomes less important than the previous one. So H3 we can say headings and paragraphs, something like that. And you see it keeps on being smaller and smaller. And we can also have H4. I don't know what to say in H4. Let me just say again, subscribe to this channel. Yes, and then let's add H5 so that we can have H1 to H6, H5, and we can say good job, keep learning to code. Great. So you can see how they are arranged from H1 being the biggest to H6 being the smallest. So headings help our search engines and screen readers know the importance of each paragraph, not paragraph, but each heading in the web page. So when our search engine sees the H1, it knows this is the most important heading in our page. And also when it sees H6, it knows it's a heading, but not that important. And one thing I want you to know is headings are important to be used as headings. Don't use a heading to make a text big. So don't come somewhere here underneath it and say another H1 and say, today I learned about headings and paragraphs. Don't do that. This should be a paragraph, not a heading. So when you have two headings in your web page, to some extent you're confusing the search engine. One thing to note is that always make sure you have one H1 tag in your web page. So if you have another page, you can also use another h1 tag, but don't use h1 and also h1 in the same page. It is not good practice. And speaking of paragraphs, instead of using h1 to make a text big, you can just create a paragraph and use CSS to increase the size. So you can see all the h1s, not h1s, all the headings have their own default sizes. But we can always, again, change the styling. So if I want the h1 to be small, I can just say style, and then I can say font size, and I can say 20, let's say 20 pixels. And we can see its size has reduced, but our search engine still knows that this is an h1. So you see, right now I'm using CSS, but we will learn CSS after learning HTML. Next, we'll be doing CSS. So be sure to subscribe and enable the notification bell icon so that when I drop the CSS course, you will get it. So I'm going to remove the CSS because we don't need it now. And we see our heading is back to its default size. So for paragraphs, we're going to use p tags. So we can open less than sign and then p, then greater than sign. And we have a paragraph tag. So we can put anything we want in there. I can say, man, I started learning HTML today, and it's so good and so simple. So you see, we have a paragraph, and also you can notice that the paragraph has its own default size. Again, as I said, we can use CSS to change the size and also the color and all those things. But in HTML, we have some specific styles that they come with. Also, one thing to note is that a paragraph tag is a block level element. Block level element means it takes all the width it can get. So it's going to stretch from one side to this side. Even if you only have one word, it's going to take all the space. So even if I have just man in the paragraph tag, its container is taking all the space from this side to this side. We can use CSS to change its display style, but just know its default style is display block. So it's a block level element. And also another thing I want you to notice that the browser removes white spaces for us. Even if we add some space here and say, man, let's say learned HTML today, we see the browser ignores the white spaces. That's because it's going to format it for us. It's going to remove all the white spaces and it's going to display a paragraph. So you can see it says, man, I learned HTML today, without the white spaces. Another thing I want you to know, if we put this in a new line, the browser is still going to show us this paragraph in one line. It won't move to the next line. To move it to the next line, we can use an inline element called BR. So we can use the less than sign and then BR and then the greater than sign. So we see man, I, and then it breaks there. And then we have learned HTML today. So this tag is called an empty element. That's because it doesn't have a closing element. So it doesn't do something like BR, opening and closing. No, it just has an opening tag and that's it. Another empty element I'm going to show you today is the HR for horizontal rule. So when we want a straight line, we can use it to separate the heading and some other content. So we can just use the less than sign and say HR and then the greater than sign. And you can see we have a straight line stretching from one side to the other. It's called a horizontal rule. This is also an empty element. It doesn't have a closing tag. So you can see how important it is. So in this tutorial, I showed you how to use H1s, H2s, all the headings and also the paragraphs. And we touched a little bit on empty elements. And one thing I told you about the paragraph tags is that they are block level elements. So that means they take all the space they get. So the break, the BR element is not a block level element. That's why you can see it's inside another paragraph. So we can also have another one and it will just work fine. So you see we've added another line and it's cool. So I'll see you in the next tutorial. In this section, we're going to be learning about images in HTML. So first, I'm going to start changing the way my web page looks. I'm going to start with the title. I'm going to say images. And we can see on this tab, we have images as the title. And I'm going to change my H1 and say, let me say HTML images. And we have HTML images. I'm going to remove the paragraphs and also remove from H2 and all the other headings. So images improve how our web page looks. They make the web page look beautiful sometimes. And to have an image in our website, we use the img tag. So we use the less than sign, then write img, then close the greater than sign. So the image tag is an empty element also. It doesn't have a closing tag, but something that it has is called an attribute. So inside the img, we can have an attribute source. So we're going to say src. And then inside the src, we give the path to the image. So for example, I can jump over to Google and just download, let's say, cat image. And we can have these cat images. So I can just right click and then I can copy the image address, just copy the link, and then I'm coming back to my code editor and then I'm going to paste. And if I come back to my website, we see we have the cat image in our website. So the src, we use it to paste in the path to the image. But many times you might not want to use a link, so you can just download the image itself. So I'm going to save image as and then download.jpg and then save. So once I download the image, I'm going to remove first, I'm going to remove all the text for the link. And I'm going to remove all this. Then I'll select the other remaining one. I think up to that and remove it. So we've removed the image tag. So if I come back, we don't see an image. I'm going to refresh because live server delayed to refresh. So what we can do is we can bring our image into Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to my Explorer and I'll go to downloads and we can see our image here. I'm going to drag the image into Visual Studio Code and we have our image in Visual Studio. Next, I'm going to create my image tag again. And I'm going to have the src point our image. So I'm going to say, let me look at the name of our image, download.jpg. And once we do that, we see we have our image again. Another attribute we have in our image tag is called the alt attribute. So the alt attribute just gives us some more information about the image. For example, I can say this is a cat image. So we don't see it right now, but it's important for maybe someone who's using screen reader, and also it's important for the search engine because the search engine will read this and know this is a cat image. So let's say when someone is Googling cat images, your image might pop up and the link to your website, someone might click and you can find a new visitor in your website. Also, it's important when, let's say, we have slow internet connection. So the browser is loading and the image is loading slowly. Someone is going to see this text fast. Or if the image is broken, we're going to display this text instead of the image. So for example, if I remove D, the image disappears and we see the alt text. So we see this is a cat image. So if I bring back D, the image appears and the alt disappears. One thing I want you to know is that we do not insert an image in our website. We just link an image to our website. That's exactly what we are doing. So the img tag creates a holding space for our image, and then we link to the image using the src. So we put in the link and then we link to the image. We do not insert an image on our website. We link to it. See you in the next tutorial. That's been it for images. Have you ever been on a website and then clicked on something and then jumped to another website or jumped to another section in your web browser? That is all made possible with hyperlinks. Links help us to jump into another section in our website, or we can jump into another website. Let's say we've linked another website to our web page. For example, we can have our web page, and let's say I teach in YouTube and someone is visiting my website. I can link YouTube to my website so that when someone clicks on that link, they will be sent to my YouTube channel. To create a link on our website, we have to use this tag. We say A, and then we can press enter. And the A tag creates a hyperlink. And once we've created a hyperlink, we see we still have nothing on our website. That's because we need to add some text that will be displayed on our website. So we can say youtube.com, as simple as that. Or instead of saying youtube.com, we can just say YouTube. And we can see we have YouTube in our browser. And also we have this attribute href, which is the most important attribute of all this element. It's what tells us the destination of our link. So for example, if we want to go to youtube.com, we're going to put YouTube's link inside these quotation marks. So we are going to say www and then colon and then two forward slashes, and then we can say youtube.com. And now if we come back to our browser and click on our link, oh, I forgot, I should have started with HTTPS. I'm sorry. So I'm going to redo it. I'm going to say HTTPS and then colon and then two forward slashes, and then I'm going to say www.youtube. And then I also said com instead of com. So right now if we click on our link, we see it's redirecting us to YouTube. You see, right now we are in YouTube from our website. So we can go back to our website. We've realized by default when we click on this link, the other web page opens in the same window. And if you want to change that, we can use another attribute called target. So we have this target attribute, and the target attribute specifies where to open the linked document. And it can have one of the following arguments. So we already see we have blank, parent, self, and top. By default, it was opening in self. When we clicked on the link, we see it opens in the same window. But to open in a different window, we can say underscore blank. So right now, if we come back to our website and click YouTube, we see we have this new tab on the right side of our tab. So that's how we open our linked document in a different tab. So one other thing we can also cover in this hyperlinks tutorial is the absolute URLs and relative URLs. So what do I mean by that? We have this HTTPS, and like, let's say in short, we have this full link that we are trying to link in our web page. This is called an absolute URL. So you see it starts with HTTPS and then colon and all that stuff. But also we have relative URLs, and relative URLs, it's just linking to another section of your website, the same website. So for example, if we create another file and say page2.html, and then we create HTML, and then let's say hello, this is page 2. So we can link to this page. It's in the same website, but it's a different page. So we can link to that. We can just come down here and create another tag and link to it through page2.html. And then we can have the text that is going to show in our website. So we can say go to page 2. So you can see we have go to page 2, and also we can realize that anchor tags are inline elements. So you can see this first link and the second one are both in the same line because they are not block level elements. If we add here a paragraph and say hello, we will see it moves the next link to the next line because it's a block level element, and I told you block level elements take all the space they can get. So I'm going to remove it and we're going to see our relative URL. So right now if we press go to page 2, we see hello, this is page 2. So this is how we use relative URLs when we are linking to different pages or different sections in the same web page. That's it for this tutorial. See you in the next one. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about HTML lists, and HTML lists just help developers group a set of related items in a list. And also we have to know that we have different types of lists. We have ordered lists, we have unordered lists, and also we have some other lists like description lists and others. But in this tutorial, we're just going to look at ordered and unordered lists. So first, let's begin with ordered lists. So we are going to create an OL tag. So to create ordered lists, we use the less than sign or L then greater than sign. And inside those tags, we have list tags. So we say li, and the li has an opening tag and a closing tag also. And in our browser, you can see we already have number 1. So if I say, let me say cow, you see number 1 is cow, and then if we have another one, you can see we have 2, and I can say got, and then I can have another one, you can say li, and then I can say, let's say pig. So we have this ordered list. Let me just create a p tag up here and say ordered list. So we have this ordered list which has a cow, a goat, and a pig. And also we don't have to always name it using 1, 2, 3. We have this CSS property called list, let me say style, and then list style type, and then we can say let us say circle, and we see right now we have these dots. You see that's now the style type, and also we can have disk and all others. And the next one we're going to look at is called an ordered list. So if the ordered list we were using OL, of course the unordered list we're using UL. And then we open, and then we just use the LIs again, and I'm going to create another tag here, p tag, and say unordered list, like that. So we can have another p tag down here and say bread, and then create another one, and this is unordered, so we can just put anything inside. You can say bicycle, and the third one you can say motorbike. Sometimes even in our websites we're going to use these lists as our navigation. So if you've ever been on our website and seen something like a menu, about us, contacts, those are all unordered lists. That's what I always use for my navigation. So I use an ordered list. For example, if we create, let's create another UL and say li, and I can say home. And again, I can say, let me assume this is my project. So my developer website, I can say projects. And then again, I can say about. And I can say contact. So you see, we are also using our list to create a navigation bar. So in this case, instead of using LIs, we're going to be using LIs and also links inside our LI so that we can have clickable links. We can also specify the list style type and give it none, because in websites, of course, you don't see these dots. So we can say style and say list style, and we can just give it none. And you can see the first list tag doesn't have a disk or that small dot. And if we do the same for all the others, so I'm just going to select all and then say style, and then say again list, dash style. You can say style type or just list the style and then say none. We see the rest also don't have it now. So you might be wondering, how did he select all those at once? Let me show you what I did. I'm going to press escape first. So I select the first one, the first list tag, and then since the rest are all in the same line, I just press Ctrl Alt and then the down arrow key. And then if I do anything, it will apply to all the list tags. So if I say list, first I said style, and then I press enter, you see it happens in all the tags. So I can say list dash style, and then I can just say none. So this is a CSS property. And right now we're not learning about CSS, we're learning about HTML. So we don't need it. So I'm going to remove it. And just to remove it, I'm pressing Ctrl Z until I get the desired output. So I'm also going to remove from this one and also remove the quotation mark. So that's it about the lists. Just remember that today we've learned about ordered lists and unordered lists. And most of the times you're going to be using unordered lists in web development. For me, actually, I haven't gotten to a place where I needed ordered lists. But of course, be creative. If you want, you can use it. You can style it the way you want and get the desired output. See you in the next one. In this tutorial, we're going to be learning about HTML forms. So I want you to mark that we are not going into so much details about the forms. This is actually just a crash course. If you want more details, just comment down below and I'll be sure to make a fully detailed tutorial on what topic you want to learn. To create a form, we just create this tag, less than sign, and then form, and use the greater than sign. And this is an HTML form. And the form doesn't work just like that. It also has some other elements inside it. And it has a lot, but we're just going to work with a few. So the first element we're going to talk about is the input element. And you can see it has this attribute type text. So we have this input element, and as soon as we create it, we see an input in our browser. So the input element is an empty element also. It doesn't have a closing tag. And we can also give it another attribute and say placeholder, and we can say name. So you see, once we create this attribute and give it a value, we have the name inside the input. So the name just helps us to know this input takes a name, so that someone doesn't put a number here instead of a name. We can also have multiple inputs in a form element. So for example, we can have another input and say placeholder equals, and then you can say last name, like that. And if we have a last name, that means this one should be a first name. So we can say first and then name. So you see, we have first name and last name. So when the user is inputting in the details, they know this is for the first name and also my last name. The form element can also have another element, which is, of course, the button. So you see, the form element mostly helps us to collect information about someone or something. So for example, let's say this is a hospital. We can check for the name of the patient, the age, the gender, and all that. So we can add a button, and we see we have this button here, which has nothing, but you can see it's clickable. So when I click on it, you see it refreshes the browser. So I can say submit. Let's say submit the details. And if this was something like a to-do list, you could just say save, or if it's updating, you could say update. Let's say something like update task. But right now we could just say submit. We see we have an input element, and also something else to realize is the input elements are also inline elements. Even the button itself is an inline element. Let's continue checking other input elements. Another input element we can have is called checkbox. So we can just create an input and then say checkbox. So if I come back to my browser and refresh, you see we can have a checkbox here. And something else we can talk about is called the label element. So we can have a label which just gives us more information about the input or whatever we want to talk about. So I can say label, and then I can say first and then name. And you see our first input has a label first name, and we can do the same for the next input. So I'm going to create a label for, sorry, not form. I'm going to create a label for the next input. So we say label and then last name. And we see also this one gets the last name. Most of the times we encounter this checkbox. For example, we can create a label and say checkbox. We see something like this. Let's say label, and we see most of the times we see something like agree to our terms, and then you can check or uncheck. So if you agree with our terms, you can check it or not. Other input elements we can use, let's create another one. We can have radio buttons. So we can say radio, and you can see we have a radio button. So this one, you should only select one. So most of the times we always have 2 radio buttons. So let's say we can have radio button, and then let's create another one. We can say input and then type again should be radio. So we have 2 radio buttons and we can select both of them. But most of the time we don't do that, because let's assume we are having male or female. So we can look at gender and say male or female. So let's create a label for the first radio button and say male, like that. And then we can create for the next one, say label, and then we can say female. So we should be able to select one or the other, but you can see right now we are selecting both, which is not how it usually works. In this tutorial, I want to show you how we have to make it so that we can only select one, but just know that you can't be female and male at the same time. You have to select one. Another thing I want to show you is another element is called select. We can have a select, and I'm going to remove this. I will remove the other things. So select, you can see select has this drop down. So we have other options inside it, and we can have a few options inside. So we can have option. The first option, we can say, let's have a few options. We can say this person is an adult, and we see by default we get adult as the first option, and then we can create another option. We say option, and then we can say, let's say teenager. How is teenager written? Teenager. Yes, I think that's okay. So we see we get 2 options, adult and teenager. And then we can have another option, and we can say child. So we get 3 options, and we can always select whichever we want. So we get teenager, we get adult, we get child. Another element we can talk about is a text area. So sometimes we want to give in more information, not just something like a simple name. We want to give in more information in detail. So for that, we use a text area. So we create a text area by opening the less sign, and then we write text, the text area, and then close it. And now we can give it a name and an ID. So name, we can say message, and then we can have an ID and say, let's just say message again. And if we come back to our browser and refresh, I forgot to add an text area, like that. So you see we have this. So we have this box, and we can expand it. So we can write a lot of words in this box, unlike the input boxes. You see we can just keep on writing, like giving more details about this guy who is sick. I know you've seen this for. This is also another property, and for now we don't need to talk about it. or if you want the tutorial on input forms, just tell me and I will make a new one, and we can go in details about the input forms and how they work and how even to select one radio button instead of both. And that's it for this tutorial. I'll be making a new tutorial which will be covering both HTML and CSS, which will be full course, and it's going to be a long one. I'll go in details about everything. So remember to like, share, and subscribe, and also enable the notification bell so that when I drop a tutorial, you're going to be the first to get it. See you in the next one. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about the div element. And a div is just a container that groups related content together. How do we create a div? We use the less than sign and then write div, then greater than sign. And if we look in our browser, we cannot see anything at all. That's because a div is simply a container. And what I can tell you about it is that it's a block element. So that means it takes the space from this side to this side. So many times we use CSS to style our div so that we can see it or give it a specific height and width. So let's use simple CSS. So I'm going to say height. I'm going to say, or instead of height, let's give it a background color and see how it looks. So I'm going to say background dash color. Then I'm going to say red. Then I'm going also to give it a height and a width. So I will say height, and I'm going to say 150 px, and a width, let it just take all the width it can take. So we see we have this huge container that is taking all the space it can take from left to right, and it's taking all the space because it's a block level element. So let me give you a simple example. Let me create a paragraph tag, and inside it say, hello, I am a div. And then I'm just going to say ha 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 ha, like that. So we see this p tag is also a block level element, but if we create a div in here and just cut this and paste it after I am a div, put it there, we see I am a div has its own line now. So that means the div is taking all the space and it's pushing ha 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 into the next line. So you see how important divs are, because divs actually help us just to group some elements together that we want to style in our web browser. Let's do a simple example and see how we can group related content together. So let me say HTML. I'm going to create a H2 and say HTML. Let me say programming languages. We have programming languages, and we can have a few paragraph tags. So we can say P, and we can say Java, then I can say Python, then I can say, actually I'm just typing the ones I've studied, so don't say why didn't he say about this one. So I can say Python, and then I can say JS, and we can see we have these programming languages here. And then also we can let's create frameworks. Let's create another one for frameworks. So I'm going to say H2, and then I can say framework, and I can say P, and then I can say Django. Django is actually a Python framework. And then I can say React, which is a JavaScript framework. And then I can say Spring Boot, which is a JavaScript framework, not JavaScript but Java. And then finally I can say Laravel, which is a framework for PHP. So that means I'm going to add PHP up here, so I can say PHP. So you see, when we want to style this with our CSS, let's say we want to have both of these aligned vertically, we can't do that. Actually, we can't style, like have two containers. Let's say we have programming languages on the left and frameworks on the right. So to do that well, we can use a div. So I can just create a div. I can create a div and then open it, and then I'm going to select all this up to the H2, and then I'm going to press Alt and the up arrow key, and we see they've all been brought inside the div. So we have one div, and we can actually create another div to group all this again and select it to up to the H2, press Alt and then up arrow key. And we see now we have two containers that we can style. So we can say style, and we can give this a background, and we can say green. And you see we have a green container, and we can give the other one also a background. So again, we can say style background, and we can say sky blue. So you see we have these two containers that are grouping related content together. Let me just add padding. I'm going to say 8 pixels, and then border radius also. I'm going to radius. Oh, I should have ended this statement. I'm going to say border dash radius. I'm going to say 10 pixels. So you see how good this looks. So we are now styling our div. But I say this is not a CSS tutorial, so we are not going to do so much. 8 pixels, and then border radius should be 10 pixels. So you see we have these two divs that are styled and have related content inside. So now that we've learned this, I'm going to build with you guys a small project that we can put everything that we have learned into practice. See you in the next section where we'll be closing this course. Congratulations on getting to this section of the tutorial. You've come a long way. So I think it's good we put everything we've learned together so that we can see everything in action. So I came up with a small project called student registration page, a small website we can build, and then we're going to put it online on GitHub so that we can share the link with our friends. So we're going to start with the title. I'm going to call it student, and then registration, and then page, like that. So if we look at our browser, we see the title has changed. And then next, we are going to create an H1, and we're going to say tech, and then workshop, registration. And we're going to see it in our website also in our browser. And then I'm going to create an HR. So I'm going to say HR, and we're going to have an horizontal rule. We're going just to put everything we've learned into practice. And then I'm going to create a div, open it. And inside the div, first we're going to have an image. So I'm going to have an img tag. And then let's jump in the browser and just look for tech images. And I'm going to look at the ones we have. So I'm going to click on images, and I'm going to select this one. And then I'm going to save image as, and then tech, I'm going to call it tech.jpg, and then save. So I'm going to go to the downloads, and then I'm going to drag my tech.jpg to my Visual Studio. So I'm going to delete this page 2 first, and then drag it here, and we have our picture in Visual Studio Code. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to link to that image. So I'm going to say tech, and you can see Visual Studio is already giving us a suggestion, and I'm going to give it an alt of workshop, and then banner. So let's go back to our website. We see we have our image here, and then next we're going to have a p tag, and I'm going to say p, and then I'm going to say welcome to our annual, and then I'm going to use strong, then I'm going to say tech workshop, and then oh, I already closed the strong. The Visual Studio already did it for us, and I know we didn't cover strong, but that's it. You won't be taught everything. Most of the teaching you will do is your own research. So I'm going to say tech workshop, and outside strong I'm going to have an exclamation mark, and then say learn the basics of web development, and then comma, and then AI and more. Once we have that, we're going to have another P, and we're going to say here's comma. No, let's not put a comma now. We can say what we, then apostrophe, and then we're going to say cover. So we have this small text, and it says here's what we're going to cover. Then we can use an ordered list. So we can say UL, and then inside LI we can say H HTML and then basics, and then we can go to JavaScript next. So you can say JavaScript for, let's say, beginners. And then next we're going to say intro to Python. Intro to Python. And then next, building your first website. By the way, guys, if you want us to build a full stack website from scratch using HTML, CSS, JS, and Django, just comment down below and we are going to do that together. After that, we're going to have another HR. So I'm going to go outside the div and have another HR. So I'm going to create another HR down here. So we see we're going to have another small section down here, and we're going to say div, and then we're going to have h2 and say register below, something like that. And then of course you figured it out, we're going to have a form. And inside the form we're going to have label. And you've realized I'm going fast because it's just a simple project, and by now you have an idea of what we are doing. We are not beginners anymore. You are developers building something good. So we're going to have label for our first name, and then we're going to have input. So I'm going to type input, press enter, type should be text, and then we're going to give it, let's give it a placeholder of full name. So I'm going to say placeholder, and I'm going to say full name, simple as that. And then I'm going to have break tags. So I'm going to say br and then another one br, simple as that. After that, we're going to have another label. So we're going to say label, and we're going to say email. Underneath we're going to have an email. So we have email, sorry, not email, we have input, and we're going to have a type of email. We can always change the type to be a number, email, or text, and it's many things we can change it to. So you're seeing our project is starting to come to life. So we have email, and then we're going to have a placeholder of email like that. And then next, we're also going down, we're going to have gender. So we're going to have label, and then we're going to say gender. Simple as that. So we're going to have input, and we're going to have type is going to be radio. So we want to have gender, it should be male or female. So we have gender, and we're going to say name equal gender, and then value equal male. Let me use caps, so male. And then underneath we're going to have break tags. So we're going to say br like that. And also we don't want gender to be in the same line, so we're going to add a break tag in front of our label so that gender can be in its own line. So not in front of our label. I'm going to cut this and put it in front of our email placeholder. So we see gender has been moved to its own line. And then next we're going to have another label, not label, we're going to have another input, and we're going to have type should be radio, and then name, also it's going to be gender, and value is going to be female, and we're going to have break tag again, so br, simple as that. So we have gender. Something is missing. Oh, I forgot. Before the break tag, I should just put male, then female, something like that. And it looks good. So I'm going to remove this break tag before male, after male, so that we can have gender and male and female at the same, on the same line. And then next we're going to have a workshop. First I'll add a break tag here so that they can be two. And we're going to have, let's create another label, and we're going to say select workshop and then type. And then I'm going to put colon so that someone should know what they're supposed to select. And we're going to have input, And then we're going to have type should be checkbox. And then name is going to be topic. And then we can have value, which is the first one should be web. And then outside, I'm going to say web development. And then I'm going to have a break tag. And I'm going to have another input. Again, the type is radio. And name again is going to be topic. And then value is going to be AI. And outside it, I'm going to say artificial intelligence. And then we're going to have a break tag. So if we come back to our website, we see select your workshop type, and I should have put a break tag here, break tag, so that we can have select workshop. And then I put ready instead of checkbox. It should be checkbox like that. So we have select workshop type, and we have web development and artificial intelligence. And then next we're going to have another input. The value again is just checkbox. And then the name is topic. And then the value is going to be Python. And then outside the tag, we're going to say Python. And we're going to have two break tags. So we're going to say BR and then BR, like that. So we have select workshop type, and we have web development, artificial intelligence, and Python. And then next we're going to have someone should tell us why they want to join. So we're going to have another label. So we're going to say label, and we're going to say tell us why you want to join, like that. And then out here, I'm going to put a break tag so that it's going to push the next content into the next line. And we're going to have a text area because we want a detailed explanation. So we're not going to use an input, we're going to use text area. And the name, we're not going to use a name. So I'm going to remove name and ID. And we're going to say rows. I'm going to give it 4. And then we can have calls equals to 40. So if we come back here, we see tell us why you want to join, and we see a text area next. So after that, we need a few break tags. So we're going to say BR and then BR again. And then we're going to have two inputs. We're going to say input, and the type is going to be submit. And then the value is going to be register. And then we're going to have another one, say input, type is going to be reset, and the value is going to be clear. So look at what we have right now. We have two buttons down here, which are also inputs. This is the site we have from top to bottom. So let's continue a little bit. So outside the div, the form, then the div, I want you to come and create another HR. So just type HR, press enter, and that's it. And then I want you to create a p tag and say want to learn more, and then question mark, and then we say visit, and then hour. And then I'm going to press enter to have another line, and I'm going to create an anchor tag with an href and say https, and then colon, and then just a dummy link. I'm going to say example.com, which is going to no page, and I'm going to say target. So we're going to use the target attribute again and say underscore blank. Then I'm going to write here official site. So here it is. We see want to learn more, visit our official site. You see how we are putting everything together, and we're going to have two more break tags down here. So you see here they are, and we're going to have a last p tag, and we're going to use an HTML entity. So I'm going to say and copy, This is going to give us the copyright symbol. And then I'm going to say 2025 tech workshop, then period. And then I'm going to say all rights. I'm going to say reserved. Nice. So this is what we have. This is our final project. It's called Tech Workshop. You see, this is all we have, and it's a beautiful, simple site. Now, in the next tutorial, when we're going to be learning about CSS, we're going to start with this project and style it and make it look so beautiful. Congratulations on finishing this crash course. You've come so far. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and also comment down below and tell me what you want to learn or what you want me to cover. I'll see you in the CSS course. I'm sorry, I promised you guys we're going to upload our website and I forgot and I closed the other tutorial before we did that. So we're going to do it quickly in this one and we're going to put our website online. We're going to first create an account in github.com. So just say github.com, head over to Google and type github.com, and I already have mine logged in. So if you don't have an account created, then log in, then it's going to give you this dashboard. Once you have that dashboard, I want you to come to this plus icon, create it, and then we're going to create a new repository. The repository is just a container. We're going to put our project and we're going to say, what should we call it? So let's just call Tech Workshop. Tech, then Workshop. Good. And here we can say, this is a simple website I built in my HTML learning. So this is a simple description and we can create the repository. So once you create the repository, I want you to scroll down and you're going to see upload an existing file. Then I want you to click that. After clicking that, we're going to minimize our browser and we're going to open our folder, the one we've been working in, and I'm going to select the files, the index.html file and the image we are using, and I want you to drag these files to GitHub. So once you do that, we're going to see our files down here, and you can add some other exceptional, or you can add another extended description, but for me I won't do that. So I'm going to commit changes. Once we commit the changes, we have stored our code in GitHub. So now we have our code stored in GitHub. So if we want to put it to use GitHub pages to see our website online and get the link, so we're going to come to settings and then we will go to pages, and then we are going to deploy from a branch, and then I want you to come from branch and select this. We have this drop down and I want you to select main and then leave root as it is and then press save. Great. Now I want to just wait for a few minutes. Sometimes it can take up to 5 minutes and you're going to get your link. So we're going to wait for a bit. Just keep refreshing your project. And after a few minutes, you're going to see you have your link here. It says your site is live at HTTPS, and you can see this is the link we were learning about. So I can press visit site, or I can come and right click and then I can say open link in new tab. And if we come to this tab, we see our website is online. If we take this link and share it with our friends, they're also going to visit this link and enjoy our project. So see you in the next one. Thank you for doing this tutorial with me. I know I promised you that we were finishing in the last section, but I remembered, I forgot. And thank you so much for continuing with me. See you in the CSS crash course.